Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me from ballreport.com. Go subscribe, ballreport.com. Today, if you're not already, Ryan Sylvia is here. Ryan, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. It was a really fun game last night, kind of some infectious energy from the Lady Vols. So it's kind of transferred over to a high energy morning. We just talked to Rick Barnes, and he was excited about it, said his wife was excited about it. They kind of talked about the game last night. And so it's just kind of been good vibes on campus. It kind of feels like that Alabama win in football from a few years back where, you know, you see a young coach get over the hump and beat the arch rival with the coach that's been there forever, that's caused so many issues for you, and finally you get over that hump so early in one of your coach's careers.
I hadn't considered the Alabama 2022 component, but that's a good pull. I mean, it's also kind of funny, like how crazy the turnaround was, because we went from, oh wow, what an awesome win, my wife and I talking about it, to, oh, we got to go to the basement because we have a crazy tornado warning where your phone goes off and you're like, what's happening? And I think they were like, didn't they keep people, were you stuck in Food City Center last night after the game for that?
We weren't stuck because we were just waiting for Kim and Gino to come and talk to the presser, but there was a moment where every single media member had their phone get the alert at the same exact time. And yeah. I kind of wish it happened like in the middle of the presser because it would have been kind of funny, but no, we were fine. But someone said they had something on the system, like the audio at the arena that was like, hey, you either need to go now or wait here for 30 minutes. But like if you wait any longer, then you're going to be stuck out there. So it was definitely a kind of a weird moment because it was like 10 minutes after the game ended.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Ryan, I mean, obviously biggest win in the Kim Caldwell era thus far at Tennessee. But before we get into that, we don't even have 24 hours later. It's really like 12 hours later. How would you best explain how Tennessee was able to beat UConn? We heard Kim after the game where it's like she I think used the term outworked the Huskies. Was that all that you saw, or did you see other things that Tennessee did really well to beat a top 5 longtime rival?
I do think that was kind of the majority of it. Like this felt like the first time all season that they played 40 straight minutes. Like there was maybe spurts where UConn did things. Like in that second quarter, UConn took a 7-point lead twice and kind of got close to maybe the danger zone for the Lady Vols, but very quickly Tennessee responded. So it felt like the first time all year maybe that we saw Tennessee put together that full 40-minute game that Kim Caldwell keeps talking about, that she keeps wanting to see. And this is the result when you are able to do that as you beat a top 5 team. I think you just kind of saw the Lady Vols wanted it more. And you hear coaches say that all the time. And sometimes it's like, yeah, sure. But like, even if you want it more, that doesn't always lead to a win. It kind of felt like that was a big part of it, though. It felt like down the stretch, you had to pick a team that needed this win more, or at least showed like the players looked like they needed this win more. It was Tennessee, and they out-hustled UConn. I think that showed up on the glass. Like if you look at the rebounding differential, Tennessee smoked them. It was 46-34. I know Kim Caldwell said if they wanted to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to out-rebound them by 10 or more, and then it ends up being 12. So I think effort goes a long way. I think intensity and focus for 40 minutes go a long way, but you also got a great play from a lot of your best players. Sylvia Cooper dealing with the flu, so give her a little bit of a pass for inefficiencies, but you look at the rest of your leading scorers. Z Spearman 6 for 9 from the field. Samara Spencer 6 for 12 and 2 for 5 from 3. Jewel Spear goes 5 for 10 from the field, even though she wasn't shooting the best from range. So you got efficient scoring too from your best players. It's just kind of all around. It was tough to find an area that the Lady Vols didn't look good in.
Oh, that's, I mean, a follow-up. It's like, is there anyone who didn't even really play well that you wrote down? You're like, they could have used a little bit more from this player?
I mean, yeah, you could nitpick here and there, I guess. Like Tess Darby was 1 for 5 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and maybe you would like to see her knock down a few more shots. Like I said, Sylvia Cooper, I think she'll probably want some of that game back. 4 for 15 from the field. She does get 8 rebounds, and she does pass for 4 assists, but she turns the ball over 6 times. And you give her a pass once again because she was so sick, and kind of missing practices and things like that. But overall, I mean, you look at the stat sheet. Kanaya Boyd does her role. She takes one shot, and it was a really difficult one under the rim that she gets to drop, but she plays the defense that's why she's on the team. It's because she's such a great defender. Sarah Puckett, who struggled at times this year, she plays 11 minutes, which isn't a lot, but she goes 2 for 4 from 3 and helps Tennessee as kind of that trail and transition. Julian Hollingshed steps up in the post. Alyssa Latham gives you 4 points on 2 for 2 shooting. So it really just kind of felt like top to bottom, Tennessee got the best out of pretty much everyone. And you need your best if you want to win a game like that.
100%. What was the biggest turning point of the game for you, Ryan?
I guess it's easy to just say that 13-0 run that they went on. I guess it was the third quarter, but it really felt like the tide was turned there when you knew that wasn't going to be enough. Like you knew that just because you go on that run and you build, I think it was like up to a 9-point lead. Like UConn was going to have enough in the tank. They have the talent on the roster that they'll fight back and make it interesting. But at that point, I think it was kind of like, oh, the Lady Vols might actually win this game. Like they actually have a chance here to keep this thing rolling and build up enough of a lead that even if UConn can make a run like they did at the end of the game, that you've built up enough of a cushion that you can survive it. But also outside of that, I mean, just in the fourth quarter, just some massive shots in response that Tennessee had. And Jewel Spear was huge in it too. She hit a 3 with like 3 minutes left when it was a tie game, and you tie the game up at 69, and it's like, okay, well, there's just maybe a little bit too much time on this clock. Maybe Tennessee needed this game to be a 35-minute game instead of a 40-minute game. But Jewel Spear comes in and hits a big response. She has a layup right after that too, I believe, and then Z Spearman as well down the stretch was crucial. So not only just that 13-0 run, but also just clutch play down the stretch, I think was the difference.
What looked different to you about Tennessee late in the game and work? Because we talked about, I think on last week's show, about just questions about the offense. Sometimes in the half court, and it can get dicey at times where they're just really asking Talasia to create on her own and to do stuff with the elbow and mid-range stuff. And that it looked more cleaned up here. Did it look like that to you, that Tennessee's offense has started to figure some things out here, especially late in the game?
Yeah, I think they just kind of look more comfortable, and that comes with the experience, and that's what Kim's talked about too. It's like, hey, we've been in this situation so many times. There's no reason to kind of panic. And she pointed at the Florida State and the Iowa game from out of conference play, where that's 2 pretty good teams, and it's 2 teams that one of the games kind of the score, I think Lady Vols won by like 10 against Iowa, but both of those games were pretty close down the stretch, and Tennessee was able to win those games. And all of a sudden SEC play arrived, and maybe you lose one game that you felt like you should have won, and then 2, and then 3, and then all of a sudden it's 4 and 5. And she felt like maybe they lost some confidence in closing out games, or just kind of something like that, just kind of lost their mojo down the stretch. And for them, I think, to kind of get one under their belt at Missouri, even though Missouri is not the standard of a top 10 opponent that they're trying to knock off, I think maybe that helps, just to kind of see again, like, hey, even though it's a close game, we're capable of doing it. And for them, that was maybe enough to give them some confidence down the stretch. Because I don't think it was like a complete overhaul of what they're doing on offense or defense or anything like that. It just kind of seemed like they're comfortable. They executed what they wanted to do, and they made some big shots.
I like it. What about this game went differently than what you anticipated when you were thinking about how this game would ultimately go beforehand with Tennessee and UConn? What went differently that you wrote down and you saw last night?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you look at some of the star players for UConn, like you expected better games out of Paige Beckers and Fudd, maybe. And I thought Tennessee's defense disrupted them. And I mean, they combined for 24 points, so it's not like they completely shut them down, but it was inefficient. 5 for 16 for Paige, 3 of 9 for Fudd. They both got in foul trouble, so they had to sit for stretches. So I thought, maybe UConn star power, when you think about, some of their best players could have taken over the game at times, and the Lady Vols kind of limited that. It was kind of Sarah Strong on offense, the freshman who did a lot of the heavy lifting for them, but she also had maybe some lapses on the other end of the floor that Tennessee took advantage of. I also thought Tennessee got to the rim really well. I thought maybe there was going to be some issues at times in getting to the paint and finishing at the rim. Another thing that Kim Caldwell talked about after that Missouri game was, hey, that she thought they needed to to simply just finish at the rim better. And she was like, we're working on that right after I'm done talking to you guys. We're going out there, and that's what we're doing is we're going to work on finishing. And Tennessee got to the lane well. They finished well at the rim, and I thought that was a big deal. And when UConn was starting to maybe try to build up that lead to cut things, to get closer and closer heading into halftime.
With this being, I think, unequivocally Kim Caldwell's biggest win, obviously at Tennessee, did this, like, you're in the building, did it feel like the start? I mean, you mentioned the Alabama comparison in 2022. Does it feel like kind of the tightest, like this was kind of like that signature one that she kind of had to have going in? Because you were close against South Carolina. That would have been a big one too, obviously, as they've just become kind of what UConn was in their prime. But still a top 5 win nonetheless. I mean, can you really actually understate just how big of a program shifting win this is, considering you haven't won since 2007 and because of so many Lady Vol fans, or even just kind of like not expired, but just kind of dormant Lady Vol fans who, like I saw people that were posting about it and talking about it and just like how important it was that you're like, oh, they're getting back. Like, I think this is one that kind of wakes up the people who are just like kind of waiting in the weeds to see how things were going to go. And then this is the kind of win where it's like, oh, you beat UConn. Like, this is the kind of difference where it's like, okay, I'm ready to dip my toes back in fully here. Is that what it felt like to you?
Yeah, I think we saw that in just the attendance number, over 16,000 people in the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most I've seen at any Lady Vols game that I've covered, and I've started covering games in 2019 as a student at UT. So you could see the literal turnout was there for it, but it also felt like it was tough to find someone that wasn't bought in on Kim Caldwell going into that game, but it maybe felt like that was the point where it confirmed that that's the right hire, that's the person that Tennessee wanted to lead the illustrious Lady Vols program, that they found their person. And, it feels like that Alabama game in that way, where I think a lot of people were really happy with what Josh Heupel did in 2021, going 7-5 and played well in that Music City Bowl, and maybe a game that a lot of fans thought they should have won at the goal line. And then 2022 comes and you're off to a really nice start, and you beat Florida, and you kind of get over that jump, and then all of a sudden big bad Alabama comes with Nick Saban, and Tennessee wins that game. And I think for a lot of people that were already bought in on Heupel, it just kind of confirmed things. It was like, hey, all right, Heupel's the guy. Heupel's going to bring Tennessee back to where it needs to be. It kind of feels like that same situation where there was already the positive feeling, there was already the ball rolling in the right direction, but beating your biggest rival, beating that arch nemesis coach that's towards his end of his career and has all those rings and is kind of the standard in the game at the moment, it really feels like that just kind of was a stamp of this is the right person for this job.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, I think Kim's got a higher ceiling at UT than Heupel does. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I think she's more Vitello and Heupel's more Barnes to me, where I think Heupel and Barnes are high floor coaches. And they're always going to be contending. Like, they've built a really stable program at UT. But if you were to ask me, who do I think in the next 2 to 3 years is most likely to win a title, and let's just assume let's give Barnes 2 to 3 more years here. Like, even still, which one would you predict to win a title, then another title next? I would say it's Vitello 1, and then I think it's Kim 2. I think this win and her personality, how she is with the fans, how she is with the roster, things that she says, like the CEO type of attitude and kind of maturity that Kim has in terms of like how she sees the game, how she sees the program, how she sees her current roster, where she was very protective. Like, I don't see this as like a gap year with these are my players. Like, little things like that are just like, they go a long way. And then obviously with just how many McDonald's All-Americans are coming in next year, I think Kim gets all of it. Does that make sense? Where I think she just feels like someone who is going to press the right buttons now with the fan base, with roster management, with the portal, with the high school recruits. And I think they're kind of ahead of schedule. I think it's more, I talked to Reece Van Haaften of WATE yesterday about this, where I think if Barnes retires after this year, and last night was kind of a tipping point a little bit, where Kim's team it's more fun. Like, I think on a lot of nights, and I think if Barnes retires and you go somewhere else, in terms of the coach, and there's a little bit of rebuild, I think there's an opening for the Lady Vols to kind of take over like the basketball calendar for a while. And I think last night kind of pointed to that a little bit, but to me it feels like the tide shifting a little bit, that this is real, and I think this is pretty sustainable, and I think the ceiling's pretty high with what Kim is building. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say. Do you?
I don't, and I think that's part of the nature of women's basketball right now too. And we're seeing it shift, and we're seeing it, become more of a sport with parity like men's basketball is, but it's still run by the top however many teams in the country. Mm-hmm. And the Lady Vols, I don't want to say they're in that in year one. Like it's a tough club to get into, of like the top 4 to 8 teams that have like that true national title contention. But all of a sudden you get those All-Americans in, and you assume you hit the transfer portal well, and you retain some of these younger players like Talaysia Cooper, but she's just a redshirt sophomore. Like, she's got so much more time. All of a sudden you start to stack those things, and it feels like Tennessee could very quickly break into that club and be one of those top teams that's competing for the 1 or 2 seeds in their side of the bracket. And then all of a sudden, like I said, it's becoming tougher and tougher to just run the table like so many of the top teams do. But it feels like Tennessee's kind of already knocking on the door of getting into that type of caliber of a team. So, yeah, I still think right now, if you had to rank where the next national title's coming, I think that's kind of a fun game. It's Tony number 1. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. I mean, he already won one. I would still put Rick Barnes in his crew at number 2. Like we're saying, in the next 3 years. So let's say he has 3 more years. I still like what he's building. He's perennially towards the top of the country, and in men's basketball, you get a top 3 seed, and then you just kind of roll the dice and see what happens in March. So just with the body of work that he's already shown, I think you have to put him 2. But yeah, I would slide Kim Caldwell above Josh Heupel already, and that's not any slight to Josh Heupel, obviously. Like, he's already been in the 12-team playoff, and they're reloading, or at least they're attempting to reload, and you bring Nico back, and the recruiting classes look good. So it's not like he's incapable of bringing one to Tennessee, but it feels like Kim Caldwell maybe has already jumped him. That does make you think, though, like, is there another school in the country that you look at football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, and like which one of those coaches has the hottest seat? Because there's not a single one of them that's even remotely close to being on a hot seat. And you really, like, maybe there's 1 or 2 other ones out there, but like, it's really tough to think about any other school in the country that your like main 5 sports, every single one of them, like the approval rating on all of them are like 95% plus. Like, that's pretty remarkable. Are
you going 95% plus for all of them?
Like, I mean, Heupel's probably the one with the least of an approval rating, maybe Rick Barnes, but like, I mean, I think it's a vocal minority type of situation where like you get some guys on Twitter that are mad about Rick Barnes' offense, or mad about Heupel's doing whatever, but like the most people you go up to, like, hey, how about Tennessee football? I'm like, yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. Hey, how about men's basketball? Yeah, I mean, that's top 5 team. They're really cool. Like, the approval rating is pretty crazy for all of your coaches that, like, outside of retirement for some of them, Tennessee is not looking at a coaching change anytime soon.
I think Barnes is more like a game-to-game swing. Like, you've seen these last 2 where it's like, oh yeah, Barnes special, we love it. And then it's like when you have the stink bombs, you're like, this is the worst thing. Because when Tennessee loses, they just lose in excruciating fashion. Like, every Tennessee like big-time loss is horrific because the defense might be there a little bit, but the offense is absolutely not there, and it's really rough when it doesn't go well in a big game for Tennessee in men's hoops. So I think that's part of the reason that there are big swings with Rick Barnes and how fans feel about him, because like the Kentucky game just felt so demoralizing. And then you go to Florida, that felt demoralizing in different ways. But and then you have the kind of game at Auburn where most teams would not be able to do what Tennessee did on the road at Auburn. And Yeah, I think Barnes a little bit, just game to game, just craziness. I think people's vibes on Rick Barnes just drastically change week to week. Heupel, I just think this last year, I mean, this is just such a huge year for him because I think the offense, like, I don't think the offense is going to be a top 10 offense this year. He was 10th in scoring his first year. He was number 1 in second year. I don't think he gets in the top 10 with what they have coming back and everything. And I just kind of wonder, I mean, he's going to have to win a game he shouldn't, or he has not won yet. He either has to get back to the playoff. He either has to beat Georgia at home, he's 0-4 against, or he has to win on the road at Gainesville or in Tuscaloosa. Like, there's no way around it. You're not getting into the playoff at 9-3. And I think it's been kind of rough offensively the last 2 years. And then if you have another rough offensive year this year, then you have 3 out of your 5 years were not great offensively, and you're an offensive-minded coach. So I don't know. I think this is a fork in the road year for Heupel because you've seen it previous stops, particularly Oklahoma years ago with Landry Jones and Trevor Knight and guys like that. And I mean, you have 5 stars after 5 stars, and you have blue chips all up throughout that room. If Nico doesn't work out, and then you're like, all right, well, is Faison really going to sign up for this? If this is like the kind of output that you've got, I mean, some big investments in like the David Sanders of the world. I'm going way off topic here because we were talking Lady Vols, but it's just, I don't know. I'm like, this is just, I have a good feel on temperature on this fan base, Ryan, and I know you do too, that I don't think, like, to run it back with your the same staff offensively, to not go big in the portal at receiver, knowing how much you were going to lose this past cycle. Like, Dan Key not being a Tennessee Volunteer right now is just malfeasance. Like, how you just let that get to Nebraska is just, no. 15 yards per reception over his career. Like, it's just close by. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? I don't know. I just think the temperature, because football runs everything, if they have another rough offensive year, I think the temperature in the hot seat's going to drastically change. It's like, thank you for all you've done, but like, could we just elevate Tim Banks and get a different and like go hire Buster Faulkner from Georgia Tech and maybe be in a better spot here? Because what are we doing? I like Josh Heupel a lot. I'm just telling you the reality is another bad offensive year, especially with Nico and company. We've seen this before, Ryan. Like, it's going to change. The vibe will change.
I think that's fair. And I think if you look at the fan base, I think there's definitely going to be a portion of it that would get very frustrated even if it looked like last year, where it's, like you said, a bad offense, but a really good defense. I think that there would be some people that get upset with that. There's just a lot of questions going into next year. Like, what does that wide receiver room look like? Like, is Braylon Staley ready to be a starting slot receiver? Is Mike Matthews ready to be your number 1 option? Is Chris Brasman going to take that step on your offensive line? Like, every single spot on the offensive line, it's like, well, what are you getting there? Is Lance Hurd going to take that step? Like, was it really just he was banged up, and is he going to be fine? Is David Sanders ready to be a starting tackle? In the interior, these transfers you're bringing in, are they good enough to play already at the SEC level, or are you elevating some sophomores and juniors that have been in the system? Like it is curious to see. I was surprised a little bit that there was no staff moves made anywhere outside of Mike Eckler taking a job back at where he used to coach. But that's obviously, I mean, if you're going to lose one staff member, special teams coordinator is not the biggest deal in the world in terms of like X's and O's production and things like that. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of questions. It's tough to see like a scenario where his seat would genuinely be hot after just one more year. But I could see if we're talking about 90% plus approval rating, I could see that dipping maybe under that threshold if there is another year where the offense is bad. But I'll still stand by, like, if you're looking for 5 coaches at that level, I don't, until someone shows me one that I haven't seen yet, I don't think that there's a better 5 out there in the country that you can find than what's here in Tennessee.
I think that's fair. Ryan, Sylvia, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at ballreport.com this week?
Yeah, we'll have more coverage on men's and women's basketball, of course. We have content on, the celebration for the Lady Vols win over for UConn. Caldwell got the water bath that most coaches get after the big wins, and got some hugs at the phone. But also Rick Barnes' thoughts on the Lady Vols when I talk about that a bit at the top of the segment. But he also talked about a fun story with Candace Parker about why she's his favorite Lady Vol of all time when they met at the Wooden Award ceremony back in the day. So just some fun content on the Lady Vols, but also we'll of course dive into the actual game stuff as they have a big one with LSU coming up. Baseball season somehow right around the corner. Softball season's literally underway. They played their first game last night, so we'll have kind of more coverage on that, and then football recruiting and everything you need on the gridiron as well. So, everything's cool. We have everything covered at VolQuest.com.
I love it. Ryan, Sylvia, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you next week.
The Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
All right, hello. Welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast, taping this on a Thursday afternoon. We got Volquest's own Grant Ramey is here. Grant, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How you doing?
Not
Great
too
time of
bad.
year.
Wait, what?
It's the great time of year.
It is a great time of year. I mean, the weather has been great here in East Tennessee this
70.
week. Oh my God. It's great.
There's hope.
There is hope.
It's not 8 degrees.
Here's how I know Grant's having a good week. Grant's not in all black on this
Nope.
edition of the
I
program.
thought about that when I got dressed. I said, you know what? I'm going back on the show. Can't do the all black again. I'm painting myself into a corner. I've got to show some versatility. So here I am in dull gray.
I appreciate that. Like, it's the little things. We're going to have by like April, Grant Ramey's going to be in some like just
Pastel.
baby blue
Yep.
that no one's going to be prepared for.
I'm going to look like an Easter egg on this show.
Oh my God. I don't know what I would do. Like it's a very, it would be very jarring, Grant. Be like, he's rated Austin Price's wardrobe. It's very possible.
Nobody needs that. Nobody needs that.
Well, Grant, we are less than 24 hours removed from Tennessee having a really impressive win. Second half surge over a top 15 team in the Missouri Tigers, coming in to TBA at Food City Center last night. From your vantage point, now that you've been able to sleep on a little bit, what was the most impressive component to Tennessee's win over Mizzou last night, Grant?
How quickly they flipped that thing. Because they had 2 turnovers to start the second half, back-to-back, in the first minute, about as frustrating as it gets. Just when you think it could not get any more frustrating, Jahmai Mashack fouls the three-point shooter. Again, after that second of the back-to-back turnovers, Tony Perkins makes 2 of 3 free throws. It goes to a 11-point, I think, 39-28 Missouri lead with 19 minutes left, and that place is dead for good reason because Tennessee was asleep at the wheel in the first half and had started the second half terribly, and you're wondering how bad is this thing going to get. And then over the next 7 minutes, despite scoring 28 points in the first 20 minutes and despite scoring 43 at Florida a few weeks ago and 51 at Auburn a couple weeks ago, they somehow score 31 points over the next 7 minutes. Like, insane how they go on that run. I think they made 6 of 8 threes. I think they were 12 of 17 from the field, something like that. So for them to flip it that quickly, to go from down 11 to tying the game to up 6 to up 10 to up 14 after I think it was a Felix 3-point play or something with 4 or 5 minutes left. That's as quickly as I've seen a Tennessee team flip a game on its head like that in a while. I'm sure there's been other circumstances where it's similar to that, but that's the first one in a long time where I can remember them going from dead on arrival, sleepwalking, to absolutely lighting the place up and beating a really good basketball team.
It felt a little bit like Kentucky, and we'll get to like how the comparisons between Mizzou and Kentucky and how they stress Tennessee in similar ways. I think a takeaway I have, and Ryan and other friends of the pod, we've talked about this in our group chat of just, I think part of when you look at the stats and the run, and I think Ryan tweeted about this, and I know you saw this, is just what was indicative of that second half surge and what Tennessee has found themselves in when they're digging these first half and second half holes. There is a common denominator, which is Gainey on the bench and Mashack in the starting lineup. And I think when the game flipped yesterday, it was the Gainey, Lanier, Zakai, Felix, Igor lineup. And Barnes rode that for the majority of the second half. Like, if you look at when that game flipped, it was those 5 on the court. And Gainey didn't have a great shooting night, and he still impacted the game in a lot of other ways. And you have to respect him from deep, even if those shots aren't falling sometimes. I mean, he had a great corner 3. He had some good looks too. But I think we're at a point now where we're getting more and more evidence that is your best 5-man lineup that Barnes can do. And to avoid digging yourself this hole to start off both halves, I just think it has to be seriously considered by Barnes to make that flip. And I don't even think it's that big of a flip. And I think having somebody like Jahmai come in and you're just like, oh, God, here he comes, Ed, for the opposing team. That is, of just being like, okay, they went offense first, and now you have Jahmai as the Swiss Army knife to come in and just be this energy jolt off the bench. And I think it's fair to say I think that might be the way to go from here on out, because there's just a growing number of minutes now that point to Gainey being a better option with your starting 4 than Mashack right now. Is that fair?
That's more than fair. I don't remember Gainey fouling a 3-point shooter this season, to be honest. So let's just go for no other reason than that. Because I mean, Jahmai can't keep doing that. Like, he's a great perimeter defender. He's been great for 3 years. He's been one of the best in college basketball. He's made a name for himself for what he does on the perimeter defensively. That can't keep happening. And you also can't really deny the numbers that are behind that 4-man. That when you shift with Gainey more minutes than Mashack with Igor and Chaz and Zakai and those guys, like, you can't really deny the offensive production that's there. I don't think there's that much of a defensive drop-off, or not enough of a defensive drop-off to make you not want to go down that road. I mean, after Jahmai fouled the 3-point shooter with 19 minutes left, I think he only played 1 or 2 minutes after that. I think he only played 3 minutes in the second half total. So I think you saw kind of Rick go that way in the second half against Missouri. I think you need to keep going that way until basically you see reason not to, because this team's going to have to score it at a better clip than it does usually. They're going to play defense like they usually do, that brand and kind of standard that Rick has for his teams. But you want to keep advancing and playing in March and winning big games. You're going to have to hit shots. You're going to have to score, because other teams are going to score it too. So you better put your best offensive lineup. I guess your best two-way lineup is the way Rick's going to look at it, but you better put your scores on the floor. Somebody's going to give you options, and I think Jordan Gainey gives you that better option right now for sure.
I just think it's just better overall. Like, you just see the floor balance. Like, it's one of those, not even just you have to look at the stats. You just look at the eye test and just how this looks. It's just 2 guys that Zakai can find in the corner all across the perimeter that opposing defenses have to account for, and Gainey and Chaz, who don't need a lot to get their shot off and are dangerous. Like, I think you could probably say that those are your 2 best shooters on the team right now anyways, Gainey and Chaz. And then Igor, when he has a night like he did last night, I mean, that's 3 really good shooters with a rim-running 5 and Felix that Zakai can just feast on. And I just, when you think about it, like, that's your 5. Like, that is in March, that is your best 5 when you're in do or die mode. I think we're now at a point now here in early February where we've seen it's like the whole meme. I've seen enough.
Right.
I've seen enough. This is your 5, Rick. And I wonder if he'll do it. I don't know. What does your gut say? Do you think he'll eventually do it?
I think he has to if he wants to. If he wants to put his best team on the floor at all times. I think he has been pretty rigid over his career, at least the last 10 years at Tennessee, with finding his guys and his certain set rotation and sticking with it. But I do think there is going to have to be some adjustments moving forward, because it's not do or die time on January or February, whatever it is, 6. But you better start prepping for that do or die time and those do or die situations. I mean, Rick was explaining it. He got pretty technical with his explanation, which he doesn't usually do in press conference settings. But he basically said it's as simple as, they're trying to stop Gainey from going one direction on a screen. Well, when you have that certain lineup on the floor, Gainey can go either way off of that screen, and you can't stop him from just going one direction. He's got choices, and it's really hard to defend. I think it's as simple as that. Like, just opening up the floor and having more options for those guys and being tougher to defend. So I think you have to go that way, because the numbers have been too good to deny it. And, I'm not saying cut Jahmai's minutes all the way down. Like, he still has a role on this team. He's still going to get his minutes, but you better go with your better offensive options, because you see no reason not to go that way. If it's working, just keep going with it until you have reason to stop it.
I agree. Igor, obviously, an all-time night for Igor Milicic Jr. for Tennessee. But when you look at just his entire just box score and what you saw on the floor last night, Grant, what was the most impressive part of his stat line to you?
Starting, I think 7 for 7. Tennessee really needed somebody to hit shots. I mean, you think about that first half without Igor, they were down 9 with him at some point in the first half. If he's not there, if he's not hitting shots, if he's not doing what he's doing, that's a much bigger hole you're trying to climb out of there in the second half. And it wasn't just shot making; it was rebounds, it was assists, it was blocks, it was steals. think he had kind of crooked numbers in 4 or 5 different categories. That's a big deal. Like, and I think he's scoring it in different ways. There's a off the drive to get into the rim in the second half on one possession in particular that I remember. Tip ins, put back, stuff like that, hitting threes. This team needs offense. This team needs scores. This team needs somebody that can attack the rim, that can create their own shot, that can score it in a bunch of different ways. And what we've seen from Igor the last 2 times out, because if I'm not mistaken, I guess it was Kentucky before that. He missed the Florida game at home. He played pretty well. He had good shooting numbers. He scored some points. So that's kind of back-to-back games where it feels like he's got his shot back a little bit. Now, if he continues that, that's huge. And if he continues doing it in different ways, drives to the rim, mid-range, 3, rebounds, putback, stuff like that, it's really tough to stop because he does so much and he does it in such different ways. He can do it so much versatility to his game.
Yeah, I mean, he's been kind of the one you're waiting on, I think, of this group. I think obviously Zakai is the engine that keeps this thing humming. I think one of the differences between him and Chaz is just going to do his thing in like 30 seconds. Like
right.
Chaz is not really, Chaz is like, that's just where we're at this point. Like Chaz is a supercharged Tyreek Key. And I think Igor has much, like his development and his aggressiveness will be a much stronger determining factor on how far Tennessee can ultimately go this season. And I think you saw that last night. It's just, he's not just a good shooter, and it's great that he's getting a shot back. Because it was one of those where it's like, man, you cannot lose confidence because you are a good shooter. Like, we've seen it. Like, we know you're a good shooter, but you have to take those pick and pop opportunities when you get them. And like you said, there was a really good drive that, he was it was right at the rim. It was contested, and he was able to bring it in. He was great on putbacks. He's obviously great on the boards. But he's just a high basketball IQ guy that can help take a lot of the burden off Zakai having to be the facilitator, because Chaz and Jahmai and Jordan are just not the kind of passers that Igor and Zakai are. And I just think for what Tennessee needs to really get balanced and to help them when they're in those offensive droughts, it's Igor of like, hey man, go do something, go drive, go hit a corner 3, do whatever you got to do, hit a putback on a Zakai deep 3 or something. Like, Igor is the guy you've been waiting on. Is he, to me, I just think has to be your second best player to get to where you want to go. Is that fair? I just think he's more important than Chaz.
No, that's fair. Chaz, the comparisons to Dalton were never fair to Chaz because they're 2 different players and they play the game 2 drastically different ways, different positions. They just had similar numbers scoring wise, and I think Chaz seeing shots fall against Florida was huge. I thought that pull up in transition was huge because that's the ultimate confidence shot. And for him to make that and for him to play well in that game, I thought that was huge. And he will be huge. I was telling somebody the other day, Chaz can win you an NCAA tournament game in a 5-minute stretch in a first half where he hits 4 threes and completely changes the flow of the game and the momentum and all that stuff. So I think he'll be fine because as long as he keeps cutting hard, like, you know what's going to happen as soon as you see him come off a screen. What kind of separation he has, if he's going to be able to get a shot off. And I think he'll be fine, and he'll hit shots down the road. With Igor, and I'm not saying he's Dalton, but he's a little bit more like Dalton. You remember that sequence against Auburn at home last year where Dalton makes a long 3, Jahmai Broome steps out on him. He makes that long 3. Then the next trip down, Broome steps back out on him, and he drives to the rim and dunks it. Like, I think that's a little bit more of an Igor game where he can hit that 3, and then if you step out on him, he can get by you too and go to the rim and score it from there. Or like Dalton, he can pull up at the foul line, hit a little jumper right there like Dalton did a lot last season. So I think he has to be more of that version of a player, a guy that's scoring at all levels, a guy that you can't just stop at the 3-point line. You got to defend him at the mid-range. You got to defend him at the rim. And Tennessee needs him to be able to do that consistently, like you're talking about, to take pressure off Zakai and other guys on the floor as well.
And the Chaz thing, I agree with you that I think he's going, for the fans who are frustrated with what you've seen from him to this point, my thing is, I think he's more of a March guy because teams are not going to, like, the way he's defended in the SEC, you're not going to see it the same if Tennessee's a 1 seed, 2 seed. He's going to get some really good matchups early on in the tournament. And like you said, I think he is very much someone I could see winning Tennessee a game or 2 in the tournament in a very quick amount of time. I think that's what is kind of weird about the Chaz experience, is that it only takes a couple minutes for him to make a big impact. But when you're looking around, you're like, okay, he's 1 for 2 and he's played 14 minutes to this point. He's not like, you look at his stat sheet, it's like there's no assists, there's no rebounds, there's no, like, it's just kind of, that's just Chaz. Like, that is who he is at this point, and that's okay in SEC play if Igor's doing what he's doing and you're able to survive in different ways. But come tournament time, my gut is the same as yours, is that I think he's gonna have a bounce back NCAA tournament, just because I think he's gonna be defended in a different way, and I think he's gonna have more opportunities to go off and to really swing some games for Tennessee.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're a number 2 seed, if you're a number 1 seed, 3, whatever, you're going to get some, like you're talking about, those favorable matchups in the first round to maybe build up some confidence. I think Rick has talked too about freedom of movement, and he's getting, there's a lot of physicality on those screens. I think Missouri got called for a couple of fouls, trying to hold him off of coming off screens last night. So maybe that's something that's officiated a little bit differently in March that would obviously benefit Tennessee in a big way. At the same time, with that Missouri game, man, if that's a March game, you can't get down 10-11 in the first half and expect to come back, because those games in March, it starts getting, it starts getting late early on. Like, if you get down 10, you start counting down towards the end of the game, like worried about how you're going to get that offense. So they got to be better in that way, and I think Chaz has got to be somebody that's better making shots. I think he took 2 shots in the first half against Missouri.
Yeah.
That can't happen. I think he took 7 total in the game. He needs to take at least 10 shots, and that's going to be up to him creating shots, getting that separation off screens that Rick has talked about all the time, being quicker off the screens, getting more separation, being ready to shoot it when you're coming off the screen, all that stuff. Like, he's going to have to do that, because they can't kind of mess around like they did in the first half against Missouri when it's do or die time, when it's win or go home.
What did you see that was different? Because it's like we don't get this very often, but obviously the stark contrast between no Zakai against Florida and Zakai back against Missouri. What was, like, now that you have those fresh, what looked different to you with Zakai and without Zakai in these last 2 games?
Without, I think, a little bit of desperation. Jordan Gainey seems to be like a completely different player when he knows Zakai is not there. Like, the second half at Illinois, Zakai picks up his 3rd and 4th foul on the same possession, I think, like 2 seconds apart with 18 minutes left. So Jordan Gainey's got to be the guy. And without Zakai, he scores 18 points in 18 minutes. And not to mention the shot he makes to win the game, contested coast to coast to lay up in traffic. Like, he looked great. Well, he looked like a version of that person again against Florida on Saturday, after he was dribbling the ball off his leg in a crucial moment against Kentucky a few days before that. So that was a huge change. I thought there was a little bit more desperation. Like, Chaz isn't there, and it's not just Jordan Gainey, it's all these other guys. Sometimes I feel like they get in a bad habit of throwing the ball around and then putting it in Zakai's hands with 5 seconds on the shot clock and be like, go figure it out, like, bail us out of this problem. I think they got a little bit too reliant on that. The difference, I thought, with Zakai back against Missouri, obviously Zakai going 4 for 4 from the 3-point line is a big development, because he's shooting in the 20-something% from the 3-point line. Like, if he's making shots, that's a big deal. If Igor is scoring like he did against Missouri, like he did against, I guess it was Kentucky last week, that's a big deal. So I think it's a little bit more, you saw a little bit more desperation from the other guys. Like, we're going to have to figure this out on our own against Florida. And that's a good thing, because they can't just throw it around and expect Zakai to bail them out. At all 5'9" of them, driving at the rim with 7-footers and 6'10" guys protecting the rim and trying to figure something out as the shot clock winds down.
I love Zakai just has like a great shooting night from deep, and it's like, because I've had this, obviously I'm a big Atlanta guy, and I've watched a lot of Trae Young in my life, and Trae Young, I think, has been like, how much Trae Young you watch is based on like how, when I ask somebody, like, do you think Trae's a good shooter? And most people will be like, yeah, great shooter. I'm like, Trae's not a good shooter. Trae is a high volume shooter, which is a very different thing. Trae's skill set is his vision. Early days of his the conference finals runs was his ability to draw fouls. The NBA kind of adapted to Trae's foul hunting, but that's not his game. Like, he's never going to be a 38, 40% Steph type 3-point shooter. Zakai, I think, is kind of in that same mold where he's going to have, because Trae has these games where Zakai is going to go 5 for 5 from 3, and he has the confidence, which is important because there's not a lot of confident shooters on this team right now. You need him to go 1 for 10 and then have a 4 for 4, because I think you live with both, just in the same way the Hawks live with both. It's like, he'll have a night where he goes 5 for 5, and then people are like, see, he's a great shooter. And then you're like, well, every shot counts throughout the course of the year. And if you look at Zakai's numbers throughout the year, I mean, he's having his worst year from deep, But when you watch the games and you watch what Tennessee, what he's working with in the half court a lot of the times, like
Right.
he's having to bail them out. Like he's having to take some threes that I'm sure he does not necessarily want to take, but he is a competent shooter and he is going to make big shots for Tennessee. And he doesn't take any bad ones. Like it's either at the rim where he has a dude on his back and he's trying to draw a foul, or he's just able to get inside in a way where he's sealing off a much bigger guy, which in a way where I'm like, I have no idea how the guy got that up. Or he's taking a three. Like he's no mid range. Like he's a smart basketball player, and he only takes good shots for Tennessee by and large. So I think you just kind of live with it. I think it's just kind of funny that Sakai is going to have these. Like we're going to go through his box score at the end of the year and just be like, okay, he went he went 6 for 6 on this night, and then he was 1 for 12 this night, and I just think that's just kind of the Sakai experience, you know.
And he's averaging 13 and 8 and 4 or something, like crazy numbers, despite his field goal percentage, his 3-point percentage being down. I'll tell you what is amazing about Sakai to me is his ability to score on a reverse layup, regardless of where he is on the floor, where he's coming from, where the defense is. That little dude is a magician sometimes. The way he uses the rim to his advantage against some of those big guys down low, like that's the height, I think, of his basketball IQ.
I agree. We mentioned this at the top of the show. Because I think Mizzou attacked Tennessee in a similar way to Kentucky did, and it kind of felt for a little bit that Mizzou might do what Kentucky did to Tennessee in that game last night. How did Tennessee adjust to just the high volume 3-point shooters? A lot of good shooters on Mizzou, obviously, but it kind of flipped a little bit in the second half for Tennessee and cleaning some stuff up. But did you notice anything different in the way that Tennessee worked to stop just such a perimeter heavy arsenal of shooters that Mizzou has, similar to Kentucky?
I think Tony Perkins started missing shots, or I guess not taking shots. Maybe he just got tired. I think that's what Dennis Gates said after the game. I think he had like 11 points on 4 for 4 shooting in the first 9 minutes, and 3 of those were threes. And he's a guy that averages like 7 a game. I think that you kind of regressed a little bit to the mean if you're Missouri there. Like you knew Tamar Bates was going to score it. You knew. I think they limited Caleb Grill. He did a really good job. I think he made like 11 threes over his previous 2 games at Ole Miss or at Mississippi State and home against Ole Miss. Like he's that kind of shooter. I think he's made 9 in a game or 8, 7, 6 a couple times. Like he's put up crazy numbers at the 3-point line. He shoots at like a 49% clip. I thought they did a really good job limiting him. I think it comes down to, Missouri doesn't have a Jackson Robinson who's going to hit as many tough shots as he does. Like Missouri hit a lot of tough shots. I thought they were extremely impressive, but I don't think they have the number of shooters that Kentucky had. The big man, I can't think of his name for Kentucky, number 15, I think, that made all those threes. Almanor, whatever his name is. Different guys like that. So I think Tennessee did a better job defending the 3-point line without fouling, minus 1 possession from Jahmai Mashack. I thought they just adjusted a little bit and kind of, Tony Perkins kind of went away and Tamar Bates did some stuff, but I think Tennessee just adjusted, and I don't think Missouri had the number of shooters that Kentucky had and tough shot makers that Kentucky had, even though we've seen that kind of dry up for Kentucky during this 1-4 stretch they are over the last 5 games.
Final thing for you, Grant. How do you see Oklahoma going in Norman? Should be a very winnable game for Tennessee, but like anything in the SEC this year, you can't take it for granted going on the road in this conference right now.
No, Oklahoma's hard to figure out. I think they started 13-0, 14-0, something like Tennessee did. They lost by almost 30 at Auburn the other night. I think they've had some impressive wins. I think they've bounced back a little bit before they went to Auburn, and nobody's going to go to Auburn and enjoy that experience facing that Auburn team in that arena. But it's a game Tennessee's going to have to win and find a way to win, because Tennessee has 3 home games left, and 2 of those are in March, and it is February 6th. So they're going to be on the road a lot. 4 out of the next 5 are on the road. That includes Kentucky. That includes Texas A&M. That's 2 really tough places to play, tough places to win games. Tennessee's had better luck, I guess, at Rupp than they have against A&M on the road over recent years. They go to LSU. Like, you're going to have to find a way to win some road games. You need to start that with a win on Saturday at Oklahoma. And kind of build off what we've seen at home the last couple times out, and kind of move away from that Kentucky performance a little bit and get some kind of keep establishing this confidence, because they need to find more consistency and they need to do it now, but they're going to have to do it away from home, and that's going to be really tough. Like, you're going to have to find, because it's going to be tough to win at Ole Miss in March. It's going to be tough to win some of these games on the road, but if they're there to be taken, you better take advantage of it and not let anything slip away, because it's tough to win on the road in college basketball, but you're going to have to find a way to do it.
Especially you're playing for a 1 seed. You're back in that zone, and we know how different it is where you don't get saddled with a Purdue in your region if you can close a little bit stronger because like you're a Final Four team last year. If you just avoid the Purdue side of the bracket, like you're right there, but you just ran into the one team you really didn't want to see outside of UConn.
If you have a pulse against Mississippi State in the first round of the
Yeah.
SEC tournament, or the quarterfinal round, I should say, and it's weird because I think there's 3 number 1 seeds right now. There's Auburn's obviously a 1 seed, Duke's obviously a 1 seed. It feels like Alabama's a 1 seed right now. Alabama's got a
We'll see how
really
Tennessee
tough,
handles Alabama.
Alabama's got a really, really tough final 7-8 games of the schedule. Like everybody's got a tough schedule in the SEC. Their close is especially tough. There's the trip to Tennessee. There's 2 games with Auburn. There's other stuff on there that's going to make it tough. But then it feels like, who's that 4th number 1 seed? Like Tennessee moved up after they beat Florida, and it felt like everybody forgot the Kentucky game. Well, not really, because other teams are struggling too. Like Florida lost its only game to Tennessee by 20. Houston lost at home Saturday in overtime. I can't remember the other team off the top. Iowa State has lost 3 in a row. So, like, who's that 4th 1 seed going to be? It's got to be somebody when you're kind of projecting a bracket and putting it out there. So, yes, the lesson learned last year was don't underestimate the importance of a number 1 seed and avoiding a bracket with a Purdue. I don't know that there's a Purdue in this tournament outside of Auburn, and I'm not sure Tennessee would get paired with an Auburn the way things look right now. But, yeah, you better take care of business. And if that 1 seed is on the table, you better find a way to get it because it makes a world of difference.
Absolutely. Grant Ramey, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Volquest.com this week?
Baseball's coming back. Tony Vidal and the boys. How many days away are we from now? Do you have a countdown going?
We got what? I mean, it's next Friday, so what is
crazy talk. So that's a lot of fun. This is the fun time of year where you got through January, you got through the kind of the doldrums of the college basketball season, and now you get to actually, it makes sense to start looking at bracketology and all that stuff. Like you're looking at it in October and November and December, and everybody's like, nobody cares. It's college football season. Well, now you've made it out of January. You're into February. There's huge games coming up, and it's so much fun to try to figure out where teams are going, where they're going to be seated, who you could be matched up against, all that stuff. And it's the best time of the year. It's a 6-7 month regular season, it feels like, and now you're getting towards the payoff time. So follow along. It's going to be fun.
I can't wait to see what it looks like in terms of the Valentine's Day schedule here. Like,
oh boy,
opening day for Vols baseball falling on Valentine's Day is just nasty work. By
pour one out for your baseball writer brothers.
I mean, goodness gracious, can you I'll be there because my wife is on a business trip during that time. So like I'm gonna be there on Friday night, but it's an all-time people watching event is like how many guys talk their wives like, all right, we'll go out on a different night. Like you don't want to go out on like actual Valentine's Day on Friday.
That is
like
kind of true, actually.
Yeah.
We have found that in my marriage is why go on the 14th when you can go on the 13th or the 15th and deal with a fifth of the crowd. The problem is it's on a Friday night this year. Like last week, I've been married going on 14 years this year. I started looking for reservations like 2 weeks too late because everything's booked. So now I'm gonna have to Chef Ramey it somehow and come up with something to make at the house to make up for my
Chef Ramey
foolishness. Yeah, no, ask my kids. I don't know. I make grade school kid menus basically. That's my specialty. Hamburger helper, warm up the chicken nuggets, macaroni and cheese, all that stuff.
Okay, I'll allow it. It's okay. I feel like you're a pretty healthy guy, though. I feel like that's not what you're eating, though. I think you're a lot more health conscious, is my guess.
Oh, boy.
Interesting. Do you work out to like divide that up, like what your eating habits? So you're like, I work out just so I can eat the way I want to eat?
I used to say I'm going to the gym just so I can go to Taco Bell too. But the older you get, honestly, I used to love whole milk. Gotta get away from whole milk because the metabolism downshifts.
No, I have a belief. I don't know if you share this, but you can't. Whole milk is like you become lactose intolerant the older you get. Like I'm an almond milk guy now, and it like almost right when I hit 30, it was like dairy's out. Like outside of cheese, obviously stuff like that. But like I'm not doing any like whole milk or like I might vomit at just the like a little bit of whole milk.
My problem is I'm a milk obsessive. Like we go through 2 gallons of milk a week. Like we're always almost running out of milk, and it's I blame it on the
meals. Or are you just doing a lot of cereal?
No.
What are we doing here?
I'm talking about protein shakes. I'm talking about just random like bowls of cereal. I'm a cereal fanatic like Jerry Seinfeld. Like I got a whole kitchen full of cereal like Jerry had in his apartment.
What's your go-to cereal?
Fruity Pebbles is what I grew up with.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fruity Pebbles?
It's just kind of, I don't know.
It's and it like gets stuck in there. I don't know. It's just goopy if you don't eat it really quickly.
That's the thing. It's a very much a time released thing. You cannot you cannot be messing around when you're making a bowl of cereal. Like, you got to sit down and get to work because you don't want to get it too soggy. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is a big
That's the
one.
number one. I feel like that's the goat. It's just
If I want to feel like healthy, I'd get the strawberry mini wheats, even though it's probably got a bunch of sugar in it too. But you know what? It's wheat, so it's fine.
Yeah, there you go. Grant Ramey, go subscribe, Volquest.com, and read all of Grant's awesome basketball coverage each and every day over there at Volquest.com. Go subscribe if you're not already. But if you're listening to the Chase Thomas podcast, my guess is you're also a Volquest.com subscriber. But if you're not, please go ahead and subscribe today. Grant, thank you as always, my friend, and we'll have to check back in again very soon.
Me and my pastels next time. Pastel color.
I can't wait. You put it out in the atmosphere.
Let's do it.
The Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I am now joined by a first-timer here locally, WATE Sports. Reece Van Haaften is here. Reece, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Chase?
Not too bad, not too bad. I got to tell you, out of all the Tennessee sports media folks, I hesitate on your name. I like double-check the spelling. I'm double-checking everything. I was so nervous about doing this because I'm like, Reece, there's so many potential landmines here with you, and I assume you get that all the time.
You know what? To be honest with you, working in the media, I wouldn't have been offended if you got it wrong because, let's be honest, there are high school kids I have messed up on before. So it's just one of those things where you don't take it personally and you just nicely correct the person. Hopefully our viewers are listening and take note of that.
There you go. I love that. How is everything? Because you're not you're not an original Knoxvillian here, but how has everything been in Knoxville? Do you love reporting on Tennessee Vols?
Oh, it's incredible here. I love it here. Everything is great. I mean, what a time to be a part of Tennessee athletics, covering Tennessee athletics. Football is on the up and coming with Josh Heupel as head coach, and then you got basketball. Rick Barnes has this thing rolling where every year he's a top 10 program now, it seems like. Lady Vols are going through a transitionary period with Kim Caldwell. They seem to be finding the right tracks. I mean, the SEC is a gauntlet, both men and women. And then, of course, baseball and softball. Karen has everything going for softball. And what can you say about Tony? He might win like 100 national titles over the next 100 years. So
we can only hope.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's a bit of a lofty goal, but he'll win a few more, I'm sure, knowing him, because he recruits so well.
Absolutely. The man's a machine, like out here getting Azuna 2 weeks before the season starts. Just like, all right, we'll just go ahead and get this right-handed masher for this one hole we have in our lineup right now.
How does he even do that? How does he do that?
I mean, he's just built different, man. Like, as I tell folks, it will never be better than it is right now for Tennessee baseball. Like, the Tony Vitello years will never be topped. Like, this, enjoy all of this. Like, this is the Nick Saban Alabama type deal where you're just like, hey, embrace it. This is awesome, but understand that like everything after this, even if it's really good, is not going to be what you've gotten here at the Vitello era. Nothing will ever top this.
It's crazy. It's just incredible how they're so good at it's just, and here in the office, even our department, we're like, well, we got to book a super regional regardless. Like every year they're going to a super regional, almost a guarantee they're going to the College World Series every year. I mean, how many teams can say that nationwide?
And it's so college baseball that 3 of the last 4 years, the best team is the only one who did not make it to Omaha of that all-time great 4-year run. That's the only year.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could debate last year was maybe better than that year. I don't know. But because they won, that's the only reason we're talking about that. Because that team, we were all – I mean, I remember sitting up in the media area. It's under a tent. It's very awkward. Hopefully that gets fixed soon with the new renovations. But it's sitting under a tent and just sitting there like we're sitting there. Our eyes are bulging. We're like, what is happening? Yeah. We already had the World Series trip planned out. It was crazy, but it's all good now. They won.
I mean, they learned from it, you know. And I mean, so many people I've talked to from that team and everything else, that like the 23 team, if the 23 team does not go through their adversity that they went through, I don't think the 24 team wins a national title. And when you talk to a lot of people, I think that was super helpful that they went through that early season slide. They were 5-10 in SEC play. They got punched in the mouth. It was just a reminder that like this, you're not just going to be the number 1 team overall in the country. I mean, they were preseason number 2 that year, and it just did not go according to plan. Obviously, the rotation, there were some issues there, and the lineup did not hit as well as people had anticipated, but they got through it. And I think this year is kind of like one of those. I think what makes me more optimistic about 25 than 23 and avoiding those same pitfalls of coming off a number 1 overall seed and just an all-time great team is they learn from that. And there's still some guys from that 23 team that know what that was like. And obviously the coaches who were there during that time to kind of learn from that too. I do think there's more reason for upside to not worry that there's going to be that kind of drop off. Because, I mean, they're losing so much talent from, especially in the lineup 1 through 6 from last year's team. And for most teams, that's hard to replace in one season. But I think I have more trust in this group. And that's not to say, like, I love that 23 team for a lot of different reasons, especially like guys like Andrew Lindsay and Griffin Merritt and stuff. But in terms of the actual top line talent, I feel like this year's group is better prepared to withstand the kind of drop off that 22 to 23 had. Do you agree?
Yeah, I just have full trust in Tony that it's going to go well. Like, I mean, everyone was concerned last year about the talent drop off. Obviously, Christian Moore and Blake Burke were back, and those are 2 big, huge bats. I understand that, but they lost pretty much everyone from that World Series team the previous year, other than those 2, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, they're going to be, we'll see what happens. And their rotation, I think they lost a lot too last year, if I remember correctly, and they just reloaded. In fact, it might have been even better last year than it was the previous season before that. So I just trust Tony that it's just going to all work out because he seems to know how to recruit. He's got great assistants, one of the best pitching coaches in the nation, and Frank Anderson. And then you got Josh Elander, who's not only an incredible recruiter, but he seems to have as Tony says, the magic elixir for hitters to figure out how to hit the ball well. So I don't think there's any concern at all. And, the experiences of previous seasons have taught each year, which is kind of crazy because obviously you have Dean Curley back. He can tell these new guys about the experience of last year. I don't think they win the World Series last year if Christian Moore and Blake Burke don't go through losing to Notre Dame in the Super Regionals the previous season, and then 2 seasons before, and then the season before that, making the World Series after a horrible regular season, which fans would call a horrible regular season, still a decent season. So I think the previous experiences and having some guys back always helps. So Dean Curley back, I think he's going to be an incredible, important piece, and even Ariel Antigua will be important as well.
Hunter Ensley, I think, was key, not losing him, because you're losing so many people in the outfield. I mean, with Dreiling, because Dreiling was a 2-year guy, and you wish you got 3 years at Dreiling. But that would have been nice. Like, this team, I think, would probably be my preseason number 1 if Dreiling was back. I think I'm a big Abernathy guy, but it's putting a lot on a true freshman in left field and just penciling him in as hey, we need you to be an all-SEC player right out of the gate here. Reece Chapman has all the potential in the world to pick up where Kavares Tears left off at right, but that would be one spot where I'm like, if they could have kept one of those guys. But I mean, keeping Hunter Ensley was a big thing because he could have gone pro, and having him back as one of the leaders of this year's group, I think, will be key. But also, Reece, did I see that did you go to Josh Heupel's high school, or did you cover his high school originally?
Yes, that's a great question. I worked in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. What would have been 5, 6, 7 years ago now. And so Sioux Falls is a massive land-wise, a massive market. So Aberdeen was about 2.5, 3 hours away from Sioux Falls, but we covered the high schools up there. Josh Heupel went to Aberdeen Central. I covered Aberdeen Central. So their football program was not very good when I was in Sioux Falls, but they did have a good girls basketball team. So I don't know. I did cover Josh Heupel. I actually told him that during SEC Media Days. He's like, wait a minute, what? I had no clue. I was like, yeah. It's kind of cool. So my boss actually back there knew the head coach when Josh Heupel was playing at Aberdeen Central, which is kind of crazy to think about. But not many football players come from that area.
No. But hey, it's a FCS Central, man. They stack titles over there in the Dakotas. The Dakotas know what they're doing in the FCS level.
They get all the kids from Minnesota that don't go to the University of Minnesota. That's the play right there. And then they get the stars. The Tennessee people don't care. All the stars from the Sioux Falls area end up at those 2 schools. And
I love this stuff, though. I will happily jump into the nitty gritty of Montana. I mean, here's something. I mean, the Montana State home field, it's the best. I think you could argue is the best home field atmosphere and like just visuals of the mountain line behind it. Like that's a dream thing for me. That's a bucket list, is to go to Montana State game in Montana State. I think it's unbelievable.
You got to go to the Fargo Dome too. You got to experience
Fargo
the
Dome would be, that's in there. And then I think, what is it? Idaho has one that's a dome. It's like the Kitty Dome or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but I've heard that one's pretty crazy as well. So yeah, there's a lot of options there at the FC level to go to. And also, I'm just not built for it. Like the people who, were you in the cold for Ohio State? Like, were you on the field and everything for Ohio State, Tennessee?
So we were on the field pregame and postgame. Fortunately, in this instance, usually it's a bad thing. We're not allowed to shoot games that are playoffs games, so we don't have to be on the field for those. In this instance, we were kind of like celebrating. Usually we're like, no, we can't shoot. But this instance, we were like, thank goodness, press box. It's so warm.
I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh man, do you say no? You're just like, they're like at the CFP game. You're like, yeah, I that's gonna be a hard pass. I appreciate it, but no, can't do it.
We went and did lives that morning, and I just remember Casey, who's the Lady Vols beat reporter, who's actually over here. I just remember us being like, just shivering and just holding on. We have hand warmers in our gloves, and we're shaking, and we're like trying to scroll with our gloves that don't really work, but work on your phones to get our scripts.
And they always say they do, right? Like everything you buy, they're like, it's good for your phone. And it's like, it never works. They just keep getting away with it. It never works for your phone, ever.
It kind of does, but not really. It's not efficient. It's not like a finger. But when it's 20 degrees and it feels like -10 to us Knoxville people, we're like, I'm good. And I'm from Minnesota originally, so you think I'd be used to it, but I've become kind of a wuss after moving to Knoxville and it being 70 in February.
I mean, hey, this weather, I will take it every day. I'm hoping like this is what we're looking at here the rest of this winter, quote unquote winter.
I'm gonna tell you, it's not.
No, Reece,
I got bad news for you.
No. We're locking it in.
Next week is calling.
Is it really? Is it already next week?
40s and rainy. Yep.
Goodness gracious. Well, that makes me want to enjoy this weekend that much more.
Absolutely.
Switching gears here a little bit, Reece, to the basketball side of things. Obviously, Tennessee, big win last night over Mizzou. Big win over Florida. Two very different circumstances with not having Zakai and Igor on Saturday and getting them both back in a major way Wednesday night here, both in TBA. For you, though, what do you think was the more impressive win for Vols Hoops?
Ooh, that is a question right there. The Florida win, right? You have to say the Florida win, right? The Mizzou win was impressive, but I mean, to do it without Zakai and Igor, and you don't really have a point guard, and you beat them by 20, that's insane in my opinion. The Mizzou win's going to look better and better as the season goes along, but Florida is going to be, Florida is in a fight for a 1 seed with Tennessee. So I think that's more impressive. Mizzou is probably going to be a 3 or a 4, somewhere around there when it's all said and done. So I think that Florida win, when it's all said and done, is going to be more impressive. It's crazy what motivation can do, right, though? You see all the disrespect the Florida players had with Tennessee. Belt, you know what? I won't say it on the podcast. In the locker room, Florida did that, and then the players were running around the court doing that too. And Florida was talking. I was down on the floor. Florida was talking a lot of garbage pregame, a lot of trash. So I could see why they were pretty motivated. I think that game was honestly more impressive, but it's hard because you just chose 2 massive wins. So, but I'll say Florida.
I like that. I do think, I was talking to Volquest Grant Ramey earlier, and he pointed out something that I had not really considered, was just that, like, for whatever reason, it seems like Jordan Gainey plays better, like when Zakai's not, like because I'm a big Jordan Gainey defender, and especially this year, I think he's been one of Tennessee's 5 best players consistently. But on Saturday was like more of a Rick Barnes special, where like in the moment you're like, what's happening? They're about to beat this this top 5 Florida team in just an unbelievable way without Zakai and Igor. But you're also like, after the game, and you like on Sunday afternoon, you're sitting there, you're like, that was such a Rick Barnes special. Like he's done it. Like that's like, it seems silly, but to me, I'm like, why did I think that was like out of the question, that Rick Barnes was just going to put Florida in a blender and not get swept by them, and they were going to be more amped up with Jahmai and Jordan, and just knowing their backs were against the wall, that's just the better kind of team, where they're like, we're going to take you to the mud because we don't have the offensive firepower to win it back and forth. So to me, I felt like that was more of like a Rick Barnes, like I said, special staple. I think Mizzou might be the more impressive one to me, because I think you saw at the half where that game could have gone, the Kentucky game, where Tennessee was just, they're fouling 3-pointers. They're not like, they're going to get shot out of the gym because they can't survive with their offensive limitations with a team just shooting well from deep. And they were making a lot of contested deep shots. That they were also getting a lot of open looks too. I think Tennessee to be able to withstand that and to kind of clean it up early in the second half and just like put that game on ice almost was more impressive to me, just because we've never seen Igor that complete. And I think he is just huge in so many different ways. You did it without really Chaz doing much again for Tennessee. And I don't know. I just think, well, I think Tennessee also found their best five. And this is something that I think Barnes has to really consider, is that Mashack, I don't think belongs in the starting lineup anymore. That's part of the reason that you're getting off to these slow starts at the beginning of the first and second half. I think he's probably better to be the first guy off the bench for Tennessee as a defensive spark. I mean, you saw the run that Tennessee went on to put that game on ice against Mizzou in the second half was Gainey, Zakai, Chaz, Igor, and Felix. Like, that is just the best balance of Tennessee's men's team. And I think that group is what you're going to live and die with come tourney time. So I think you want to maximize that now to get them as many minutes together as possible, because I think that's the one you have to go down with to this point.
Yeah, it's tough because Mashack is such a good defender and he can guard 1 through 5. I mean, we saw it in that Florida game where he was guarding the 5. He was guarding Condon at points. And in fact, against Mizzou, he was guarding the 5 at 1.2, where he was locking the 5 up. Yeah. So that gives you a little bit of versatility in that essence. But I do agree that lineup you mentioned is the best offensive lineup. The hard part is Barnes always turns to defense when it's all said and done, because that's what he wants to be good. We saw it in the Auburn game. They lost the game, but Barnes was happy after that game.
Yeah.
Then we go to the Mizzou game, right? The offense was incredible in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
All Barnes focused on was the first half and how bad they looked.
Yeah.
So the reality is Barnes will always default to what's best defensively. But I do agree, if you need an offensive spark, that's what you're going to see. And I could see that at like kicking into gear. And I do think Jahmai would be great coming off the bench, locking up. Like if Barnes sees somebody get hot, you can bring in Jahmai, lock this dude up.
Right.
Jahmai. He was even doing it last game. I noticed Jahmai was flopping between, because Mizzou is deep. Mizzou is the anti-Tennessee, where they have guys all the way. They got 12 guys on that. It's crazy. They just had whenever someone was making shots and that guy got locked up, he subbed out and another guy was making shots. And Jahmai was just rotating around in that first half on different guys. But I do think that you're right in essence, where that if you want to start off hot, that's your best bet.
Yeah, right. And I think Jahmai he just feels more like a natural first guy off with and it's not like his minutes would be like he's still playing 20 to 25 minutes. It's just math matters, and Tennessee has a math problem, and that to me, I just think it's an unavoidable part of Felix not being a stretch 5. Like, Felix is really good in his lane, but if Chaz is shooting 2 shots like he did in the first half, 14 minutes, 2 shots, it's like there's just no way around it. Like Jahmai, they were playing Jahmai completely off. Like he had his open 3 that he hit where it like went super high up and then it went in. Yeah. There was nobody within 30 feet of this man. Like that is how they are going to play Jahmai for the rest of the season. And I just think with how good of a distributor Zakai is and how important Zakai is in so many different ways to what Tennessee does on offense, I just think you have to surround him with 2 shooters like Gainey and Chaz, your best shooters on the team. And then hope you're like, if you get an Igor superstar game, like Tennessee's going to be really, really hard to beat, because he's like, I think he has higher upside than Chaz. Like, he's more of a do it all Swiss Army knife type of guy. And you saw like with his shooting, which has picked up the last couple of games, his rebounding has been there all year long. He attacks the rim like he did a couple times last night. He just does a lot of different, he affects the game in a lot of different ways, similar to how Zakai affects the game in a lot of different ways. And I think that was another big development for me, is like, if Igor can do this, not every game, like he's not going to have that kind of line, but if Igor can do like 18, 10, and 3 or 16, 10, and 3 most nights, like that is something that Tennessee sorely needs, and that could help these offensive droughts. And if you're going to still go heavy Mashack and Okpara on the court together, that Igor has to be that kind of offensive facilitator, because it's a math thing. You just can't have that many non-shooters and guys who are just not gonna do stuff with the basketball when Zakai's dribbling around trying to find somebody to do something, and they're just not.
I think the coolest part about Igor that not many people are talking about is the way he passed the ball yesterday, too. I thought I was talking to a couple of other people, and he was really slinging it. And even Barnes mentioned when I asked him about Igor, he was like, yeah, he was the reason Zakai shot so well from three, because he would drive and then kick it to Zakai, and Zakai would catch and shoot. It's hard when you're catching it. I mean, I'm sure you know, but if you're not a big basketball fan, the easiest way to shoot the ball is from the inside to the outside. So if Igor's driving, kicking to Zakai, that gets him in rhythm. Whereas if you're slinging it from the side, it's hard because you got to catch and pull and then go up. So I do think that was the coolest part of Igor's play. Obviously, hitting threes, if he's stretching, it's going to make a worlds of difference. I understand that. But the way he passed the ball, I'm like, man, he's almost like a power point in some ways, which is something that Tennessee, when was the last time they had that?
I mean, Dalton did a lot of that last year.
I guess but Dalton was more of a wing, right? So
he brought the ball up a lot, and he was still trying to. He was kind of like that end. Like there's some Daltons to Igor's game. Like he's not Dalton Connect 100%. He's not going to flamethrower from deep and that kind of stuff. But there is some Dalton to Igor's game.
I could see that. I could see that. It's tough because comparing position groups is always hard. But Igor's passing I thought was incredible, and the other thing with that is I think Felix and Igor can work a little bit together. You can do a little pick and roll with that too. I don't know how much Barnes will actually do that, but if you do pick and roll, if Igor's comfortable shooting it, if they play drop coverage, he's going to have a wide open three every time. And then that lob threat is there even more. And Igor said he didn't pass the ball as well as he should have to Felix. So think about that. If he did pass the ball well to Felix, how many dunks would Felix have? Because that's obviously Felix's game. But yeah, Igor, everyone is well aware that Igor is the different. Like if Igor's at his peak, this team has a real shot at winning a national championship now. But if Igor slides back to where he's not doing as much, we saw it. We've seen it. It's they're gonna have to drag teams into the mud to win the game. Yeah,
I agree. Switching gears to Lady Vols, Reece. Yes. What's your year one grade for Kim thus far?
Putting me on the spot here. Year one grade for Kim. It's definitely high. I just don't know. Can I say B plus?
Yeah.
B plus. Because I don't think she's done a bad job. I don't think she's done but it's tough because the SEC is so hard and it's tough. And I was even talking to Casey over here the other day. I'm like, it's hard because you don't have your culture quite yet. There's still a lot of players from Kelly's tenure, and then you have a bunch of portal people. I'm kind of excited to see next because it's hard to grade this season because I'm like, anything you do that's good is just like a cherry on top.
Yeah.
Next year is when okay, are you have some of your players in here? Are you, and the players who are returning know your system? If they're not top 3 in the SEC, top 4 in the SEC, then it would be like, okay, we got to reassess. But also this season, I feel like she's done pretty good with what she has, to be quite honest with you.
What Talasia Cooper is, I think is a huge one for her. Cause I think she's made a huge leap. Cause they were hey, she could be in this offseason, Cooper could be, she has the potential to be, there's a reason she was at South Carolina first with Staley. There is real talent there. And she's been a defensive superstar for the Lady Vols this year. And I think to your point, but with so many transfers and so much young talent coming in next year, with just so many 5 stars that they've invested in for this upcoming class, next year will be a lot more telling. But we're taping this before they play UConn tonight. You want to get some goodwill long term, beat UConn tonight, which is absolutely in play. That's the thing about this, what Kim Caldwell's team this year is they can beat anybody. They play hard. They are absolutely bought in to Kim and her style. That I think that's the main thing you want to see in year one is that they're scrappy. And you can tell they don't have enough to realistically contend at the top of the SEC right now, but they fight and play like they do. There's some offensive issues in SEC play, but I don't know. The defense is there. I think it's just, I think the culture is being established on that end where they're going to be really good there the second Kim Caldwell's gotten here. And I think that's just going to be the key going forward in a different way, because Barnes is also defense first, but I think there's more, how can I put this? I think there's more potential for offensive explosion with Kim style than with Rick's.
I liked what you said. They've bought into the culture, and that's something that was big for Kim coming in, because we saw what happened before Kim, and it was there was a lot of questions about culture and what it was going to be. And now these people are all in, and it seems like they all love her system. It's just a matter of getting them to all completely understand, because it just seems like it was kind of all thrown in really quickly this season to an extent. And that's okay, because it's working well for the most part, and they're doing their part. And Talesia's a dog. Like, that's the best thing you can say. I'm just interested to see how Kim improves as a coach in her half court sets and such, because sometimes I feel like that leaves a little bit to be desired. But the defense, the pressure is there. It's incredible. I love the way they pressure. It's so much fun. But sometimes when they get stuck in the half court, that ball just sticks, and it's just pick and roll and pray, or Talesia to the elbow and fire and pray that it goes in, or Ruby sometimes. But it's a lot of Talesia and Ruby pick and roll ISO. And I'm not really a fan of that right now, but I think some of that has to do with, again, a bunch of parts just being, they took a bunch of parts from different schools and then some of Kelly's people's and threw them together. And they were like, we're going to work with what we got this season. And I think from that standpoint, when I say B+, that might be a little harsh. But I think she's done an incredible job in that aspect. What I want to ask you, what would your grade be? Because I'm going to put you on the spot. I know it's your podcast.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, I would say A- probably.
Okay. That's fair.
I think it's coming. Like, I think you see that, for instance, like that Iowa game in Brooklyn, where they should have lost that game. And Talesia, I mean, defensively down the stretch and just ISOing, like that kind of stuff, where you just kind of see it, where little things that Kim, they had no business winning that game. And Iowa, top 25 team at the time, obviously no Caitlin Clark this time, but like that game was kind of indicative of just how bought in this team is on Kim and what they're going to do here. I mean, she tried the big rotations early, and we were wondering, it's like, is this going to continue? Because it's like a hockey rotation type deal where it's just 5 in, 5 out. It was pretty wild to watch. But she gradually adjusted, and I think she's adjusting well. And my gut is she gets it in terms of, like, obviously with the talent they're coming in with next year, because I think it's part of it. Like, I think the CEO part of it is important, and I think early returns or the CEO part of it is good. Like her saying, like, I resent when people say these are not my players or this is a transition, whatever it was. And she didn't like that. I mean, little things like that just kind of perk my ears up, where I'm like, okay, she gets it, and she is doing things now that I think are going to pay off in a big way. Because I mean, it would not surprise me, Reece, to throw it back in your direction. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lady Vols are the story of basketball season in Knoxville after this year for a while, because we'll see what happens with Barnes, but I don't think the 5th year option is coming in time for Jahmai and Jahmai. And if they're not back and you have so much turnover, like I don't know what Rick's going to do after this year, but if Rick's gone, I think with how deep the SEC is, like no matter who you bring in, I think there's a path where Tennessee takes a step back a little bit in a rebuilding year on the men's side, and the women's side take advantage with all the talent coming in with Kim's style. I think she's a lot closer to a Tony Vitello type to me than even Heupel is or Rick is. I think she is right behind Vitello in terms of, like, if I had to say who's most likely to get to a Final Four or get to a national title in the next 2 to 3 years, I think Kim is right there. I think it's going to be a home run hire when we're looking at this 2 to 3 years from now.
I do think she's a really good coach, and she has the culture. I just want to see, like, the hard thing for me is I really want to see what next year looks like. Cause I think this year they're going to be fine. I think Sweet 16, Elite 8 is probably the ceiling this season, to be honest with you. I'm interested to see next year, but the question is also, like, yes, you're bringing in your own players. You got a lot of freshmen coming in. I'm sure they're going to work the portal a little bit, but also, like, everyone's like, oh, well, they're going to be even better next year. I'm like, but yes, you're relying on 3, which obviously they're McDonald's All-American stars, big deal. But like, and maybe this is me watching more of the men's game coming out, but like in watching Rick, where freshmen usually never really see much, but I'm like, you can't really rely on freshmen all the time. So we'll see what they do in the portal as well. But I also think, like you said, down the line, I think they're going to be, especially if they keep recruiting like they are, they're going to be incredible. Like, she
seems to get it like Vitello does.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Where she just seems like she gets it with the NIL, with the culture, with the style of play. I think fans are going to be naturally drawn, Tennessee fans in particular. I think her personality resonates with a lot of the Tennessee fan base. I think she's just, timing is everything, and I think she's a good timing hire for Tennessee, where it just feels like there's a jolt there, and the jolt is going to continue on in the next 2 to 3 years. And like I said, I mean, the timing might help with just the men's team going through a transition period after this year, depending on what Rick does. I mean, it's coming sooner rather than later with Rick. Like it just is.
Yes. I just don't think everyone, Rick, I know Rick loves the guy. I don't think that man could do anything other than coach basketball. That's the hard thing. Is like, and when I talk to the players and such, they're like, "Oh, Rick's never going to retire." And I've talked to Rick before, and he's like, "Yeah, I haven't really thought about it." So, and that was a while ago. So take that for what it's worth. But it's just, I know Zakai means everything to him, but again, I know we're talking about Kim. So I do think Kim is a home run hire, because I mean, it could have easily has gone the other direction, because she's had 1 year of D1 experience. So in that essence, that's why I'm like, it's an A+ in that essence. I guess it's just the Lady Vols standard that I'm looking at, where I'm like B+, because the Lady Vols standard is much higher than this, but also she came from Marshall after 1 year of coaching Division I ball, and she already has this team as in a chance of getting a top 4 seed and hosting a NCAA tournament first round and second round. So that's, in that essence, it's incredible. But also Kelly Harper did that regularly. So I guess I'm a little bit torn. So I'm just like, but again, that's kind of why I'm giving the pass this season and waiting. Mm-hmm. I know I keep saying that, waiting to see what happens the next couple of seasons.
She feels like the Nate Oates of the women's game. I feel like Tennessee the Lady Vols got their Nate Oates, is what I feel like she is. I think she's going to be a high floor coach at Tennessee at the very least. Does that make sense?
I like that. I like that Nate Oates. And and remember how Alabama fans felt about Nate Oates? Kind of similar to the way people felt
like
about
Buffalo. What are we getting the Buffalo guy like out of here?
Why are we getting the Marshall? We are the Lady Vols. We should be getting, and then now everyone's on board. I think the moment everyone turned was when she said the last quote of her press conference, when I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it worked. And then everyone was like, "Oh yeah, this is the one."
100%. Final thing here, and we'll get you out of here, Reece. What is the biggest spring storyline here for Josh Heupel's team going into year 5 for you?
Man, you have good questions. I appreciate that. I think the offensive line, right? Like, the offensive line is the biggest question mark. There's a lot of question marks. It's tough because the wide receivers are a bit, and that's all anyone's talking about is the offensive line and wide receivers. But the offensive line, I mean, man, it struggled this past season, and then they lose pretty much everybody. So I guess that could be a good or a bad thing, because you could reload with it. I mean, we saw what happened with the DBs last year, where they completely lost everybody for the most part, and it looked a lot better. Still had its problems, but it looked a lot better. That line needs to protect Nico, man, because he, even like just the in Ohio State game, ingrained in my head of that man just running circles trying to avoid being sacked. So I'm going to stick with offensive line, but I guess you could say wide receivers as well.
I tend to agree in terms of there are two different things where, like, the receivers, I think Tennessee, how can I say this without getting in trouble? I think Tennessee was behind on receivers, and I think it's too late to play catch up. I think they miscalculated what this offseason was going to be like at receiver. Like, the fact that Dane Key's not a volunteer is just, or Isaiah Horton, Oakland kid who ended up at Alabama from Miami. Like, you didn't have to go big fish hunting. You didn't have to bring in Zachariah Branch or Noah Thomas that Georgia brought in both. You had to bring in somebody because you did know Brew McCoy was going to be gone. You did know that your best receiver this past year, Dante Thornton, would be gone. even if you didn't know what Nathan Leacock or Squirrel or Caleb Webb or Chesney Morrow were doing, like you knew you needed to upgrade a little bit, but those are guys you can replace with true freshman blue chippers that they're bringing in, like the Travis Smiths, the Rodarius Jacksons. They get Amari Jefferson out of the portal. We'll see what happens there. But you knew there was going to be a void in veteran leadership in this room. And you didn't need to get like a game breaker because you kept Mike Matthews and you have Braylon Staley. You have guys that like want to play and like they need an opportunity, but you need somebody. And Chris Brazzell, as the lone veteran in the room in 25, I don't think that's enough. I'm pretty concerned about the lack of veteran just assurances with those guys. I think there's a lot of talent in that room, a lot of young, unproven talent, but talent. I just don't think it matters as much if the tackles don't rebound in a significant way. Like Tennessee was forced to go 12 personnel from the Oklahoma game on all year long to survive. Like Nico, like you said, the last memory we have was him running for his life in the Ohio State game. And if Lance Hurd does not make a significant jump this spring at left tackle, because he was a gigantic investment in the portal from LSU this past year, he did not have a good year for a multitude of reasons. But John Campbell had a rough year. Dane Davis had a rough year at the right side. If the tackles aren't good and you're having to play 12 personnel and you had to play Holden Stays and Miles Gitzman so much, like the offense can't get better. Like the offense doesn't work. There's no Dylan Sampson to bail you out in the second half. You're rotating with Peyton Lewis, Star Thomas, and Deshaun Bishop next year. Like that's over. Like the Heisman type running back, that's not going to be there this year. A lot's going to fall on Nico. Part of that is, hey, year 3, you're paid a lot of money. Like you were a top blue chip recruit for a reason. Like this is a big year. Like eventually you have to just throw guys open. You have to raise the floor of everybody around you, raising tides. But to be fair to Nico, I mean, there was a lot that went wrong around him that was not his fault this past year. But David Sanders, you're looking at a true freshman, as good as he might be ready to go, like in a Darnell Wright, Wanya Morris type, he has to be. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, he has to be, or the offense is not better again. Like, I'm just telling you, like, there's just no way around it. It's pretty simple, but like the tackles, like, I would love to just pick Heupel's brain on this alone, where I'm just like, I would love to give him truth serum and be like, be honest, how was it like, or what was it like for you, just having to flip to 12 personnel and just having to run the ball over and over again, not be able, and just live with your defense, live with just what you had, to what he had loved to do the first 2 years at Tennessee.
Heave it to Hyatt.
Yeah, and I mean, he couldn't do it. Like, there was just no way around it this year. And I think there's an opportunity for that not to be the case in 25. But Sanders and Hurd just have to be great. Like, not even just good. They have to be great. They have to be healthy. They have to be, as advertised, 2 former 5-stars. I mean, that's why you bring in blue chippers. That's why, like, these are all blue chip problems. Like Mike Matthews, former 5-star, Nico, former 5-star, Lance Hurd, former 5-star, David Sanders, former 5-star. Like, they got options there. It's not like they haven't brought in talent, but those guys have to all hit. Like, it's a collection. It's all 11 guys, but in particular, Tennessee cannot be the kind of offense that wins a national championship or even makes a deep run in the playoff if the tackles aren't good. And the tackles were not good last year.
Chase, you know what's crazy, though? With Josh Heupel as head coach, we have question marks at pretty much every position except for quarterback on offense, and on defense, we're like, oh yeah, they'll be fine.
Oh, 100%. Defense is going to be
the
top
defensive line lost everybody, but they had 5 stars waiting in the wings.
Yeah, no, defense linebackers I think are going to be the best you've seen in the Tennessee Heupel era. Like, I think Edwin Spillman's going to be a dude, and I think having that rotation of Edwin and then Arian Carter in year 3 and Jeremiah Taylor being what he is in the box, I think Tennessee's at linebackers are going to be really good. Boo Carter, a year older. We'll see where Jahmai is at corner, but I think the safeties will be better. I think if Farouk can win that job at one of the safety spots next to Andre Turrentine, I think that's a potential upgrade over Will Brooks. Like, Tim Banks, keeping him and everybody, like, they're going to be top 10 in scoring defense again. Like, they gave up one team scored 20 points or more against this Tennessee defense last year. One in the regular season.
And the defensive line is always good with Rodney Gardner. As long as Rodney 100%. Gardner's there, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, they have 3-5. Like, you have Jordan Ross, Caleb Herring, and Joshua Josephs right there behind James Pierce. Like, I don't think they're gonna miss a beat without James Pierce.
No, I completely agree, and I really like William Inge as a coach too. So I'm not worried about linebackers in the future at all as long as he's there. Yeah. The secondary is usually the place where we have the most question marks, but even that last year, I mean, as long as Dermod comes back healthy, Lord willing for Vol fans, I mean, the secondary looked decent other than the Ohio State game, of course, but
and they don't rotate. Like they play 70 snaps a game. Like Ricky and Jahmai, they don't rotate. So I'm not really worried about the depth there. I'm like, Willie Martinez does not rotate at all at corner. So like, I'm not really worried about, oh, what are we going to do with is Trey Poteet going to have to play right away? It's like, I think it's going to be McMurray right away, and he'll play like 60 snaps if he needs to against Syracuse, and then Jahmai will be ready to go, and then that'll be that.
And then the offense will have to find the way to the end zone somehow.
What do you think? Final thing, and I'll get you out of here, Reece. Do you think the offense is better? Does it bounce back next year?
I don't.
A lot of Tennessee fans are listening to this, Reece.
Yes, I know. I just don't see it. I think Nico will be better, but the problem is I don't know if anyone around him. But then again, like, nobody around him was really that good other than Dylan Sampson, but he's gone. So I don't think so. I think the defense will be just as good, and they'll probably be playing the same style they did this year, to be quite honest with you. You guys can all hate me for it. I don't care.
I mean, I tend to agree with you. I think there's a chance the offense is worse.
There's a chance. Yes, I could agree. But I also I don't think it's going to be astronomically better. I guess that's the way to phrase it. It could be slightly better, the same, or slightly worse, and I wouldn't be surprised. But it's not going to be way better, and I don't think it's going to be way worse either. Yeah. But I think we're going to be right around where we were this season from an offensive standpoint.
It just requires you to hit on too many evals to me, where it like Mike has to be a hit, Sanders has to be a hit, Peyton Lewis has to be a hit, Nico has to be a hit. Like Nico was a B+, like down the stretch. Second half of the Alabama game on, he was solid. But Nico has got to be like an A+. Like it's unfortunate, but like there's just so much more pressure on him this year because there's, I think, more unproven talent. It's weird. More blue chip talent, but it's younger, unproven talent around him. And it's his responsibility to get the most out of these guys and bring them along quickly. But then the offensive line, like you said, you might have 4 transfers starting on the offensive line in year 5, which is just
But the other thing,
risk.
I guess we can all breathe because there is one more portal opening.
Yeah,
there's a portal opening.
But they're going to be so far behind. That's the spring window. You miss all spring practice, all spring run-throughs, learning the playbook and all that. Like spring guys, the only big spring hit for Tennessee over the last 5 years was Kamal Haaften. That's it. Like Kamal Haaften's their only spring hit.
Wow, I didn't realize that. See, you taught me something today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Kamal. That's it. And he was great for Tennessee coming in from Auburn. And they actually might have to do that all over again with the corner spot. It's like they probably need a Kamal Haaften this cycle.
Well, and then you'll find out quickly too. Will Jahmai McCoy be ready to go for that? I mean, everyone's saying he's going to be ready for the season, but that's a long way away still. And by the time spring practices are done, I have a feeling we'll have a better vibe on that. I would hope. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but he's not gonna be able to do anything clearly for a while.
That's the hard part too. Is he plays a position like if he played line, I'd be a little more like, okay, well he can come back. Like he plays a position where like kind of like a basketball player where you have to cut so much. It's reactionary. Yeah. So I'm like, I hope he's back, but that's one where you don't exactly want to rush it either. And make sure he's fully healthy because he is elite.
Yeah.
He might be the best player on the team next year.
Oh, that's a fun topic for another day. Who's the best bet to be the best player on Tennessee next year? Jahmai's definitely up there.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't hate that. But also for Tennessee's sake, if he's the best, then Tennessee had a rough year again offensively.
Yes, correct.
If Jahmai, it's kind of like that thing where it's like Miles Kitselman was a good story, but if Miles Kitselman leads you in yards, Tennessee lost that game. Like that, if you look there, he led, I think, Tennessee in the Georgia game. I don't think he did in Ohio State. He might have. He definitely was right there with Arkansas, but it's just like there's a connection. If a Tennessee tight end is leading Tennessee in receptions and or yards, it's probably not going well.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. I'm going to use that next year during my shows. Thank you for the tip.
Yes, and then I'll give you one more, Reece, and we'll get out of here. If they average, so Tennessee lost every game where a receiver did not average 10 yards or more per attempt this season. So Tennessee, if they average as a unit less than 10 yards per reception, Tennessee lost every game this year.
It makes sense though, because Heupel's system is the home run ball.
Yeah, without it, basically, if Dante was invisible, Tennessee lost.
That also makes sense because he was basically their only deep threat.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's like Dylan Sampson had a good year, but it was like, I mean, it was really Dante Thornton. Like, if Dante Thornton misses the entire year, you don't have Dante Thornton around, I don't know what they go. 8-4, 9-3.
Makes you wonder if he was fully healthy, what difference it would have made too.
Oh yeah, like Dante Thornton. If you want, I could do a whole podcast on the greatness of Dante Thornton and just like what could have been with him, and how underrated he'll be by Vol fans for years to come. Reece, what can they go check out from you and the team over at WATE this week?
Yeah, this week, obviously, I don't know when this is being posted, but UConn game
tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. So make sure to go to WATE.com. No, WATE.com to follow all our stuff. We'll have plenty of recaps from the UConn game tonight.
That's why I'm holding it till tomorrow, because we're doing some
Yes.
UConn recap after. Yeah,
I got you. And then maybe Kim Caldwell picks up a staple win during her first year on the program. But you can follow us all on Twitter. We have a WAT Sports account. Usually we retweet us there. You can just go there and find all of our content. So just watch WATE. We have a great team. Sam Rothman, Casey K, and me.
There you go. I love it. Reece, keep up the great work, my friend, and we'll have to check back in again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chase.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.